There's a bit of news last week in the Steven Adams department. He has been traded to the Houston Rockets. And if you don't mind, I'll just drop a couple of thoughts here and then you can bounce back and I'll
Oh
let you
yeah,
actually.
I was going to specifically say before I said anything, ask you what your initial thoughts on that were, because I found it a little bit surprising in a few different aspects there. So I'm curious what you think.
I wouldn't say it's surprising considering how the NBA, like everyone wants to be American sport, everyone wants to be the
Mm.
NBA, the NFL. Well, do you really? Do you want the NRL to be operating like the NBA, where someone like Steven Adams is going to play on a different team every season? Like, because that's what happens. You just get traded every season, and he's got no choice where he gets traded to. So, do you want the NRL to operate like that? Oh, I don't know. Um, but well, first thing, I'm not surprised because this is what's going to happen with Steven Adams. He's at the point of his career where he's just going to be um, doing a job for NBA teams as a big man, and that could lead to him playing on a bunch of different teams at this stage of his career. I would like to see him go back to Oklahoma City. I'd like to see him join the Golden State Warriors. Like there is a few teams have a need for Steven Adams, and I need to like release the sentimentality because there's no sentimentality in the NBA. No one gives a shit. So um, we need to expect Steven Adams to keep moving, but the Houston Rockets is a great fit because they've got Sengun. And he is a very funky big man who needs to be guided and mentored by Steven Adams. And the Houston Rockets also have Ime Udoka, who is like the most hard-nosed, tough bugger coach in the NBA. So that's a great fit for Steven Adams. He's got some really cool, solid veteran in Fred VanVleet, and then you've got Dylan Brooks as well. Not a cool, solid veteran, but someone that Steven Adams knows well. So I think the Houston Rockets is a great fit for Steven Adams. One other thing I was thinking about, because I saw a headline somewhere where the Memphis Grizzlies had like 13 injuries, and they had like their starting lineup was like two dudes with an NBA contract and then like some 10 dayers and all sorts of shit like that.
They
If
lost
the
their game by 40 points, by the way,
Yeah, right, no
if
surprises.
you're surprised there.
It's like the South. No, I won't say that because South Africa might defeat the Black Caps and that won't look good. Um, but the Memphis Grizzlies, they seem to. I loved the Memphis Grizzlies up until Steven Adams started to get injured, the Ja Morant saga and stuff like that. Now I look at the Memphis Grizzlies as like, you guys are a bit weird. You've fluffed the Steven Adams injury situation. There were mishaps, it was misguided, like no one really knew what was happening. Maybe it was Steven Adams, maybe it was the Memphis Grizzlies. Well, Steven Adams has a full career history of being a dedicated professional, of being an absolutely monster, tough bugger again, tough bugger from Aotearoa. The Memphis Grizzlies, what's their track record right now? Injuries.
Everyone gets injured,
So if we've got a situation where the Memphis Grizzlies, whether it was misdiagnosed, whether it was mishandled,
or both.
or both, with Steven Adams, our Lord and Savior from Aotearoa, well, that seems aligned with the Memphis Grizzlies having a bunch of their NBA squad out injured. So maybe that injury situation and the health and well-being of their players is actually a Memphis Grizzlies issue. So again, pretty happy that Steven Adams is off to the Houston Rockets because they just seem more tough buggery than the Memphis Grizzlies right now. And they seem like they're not a good NBA team, but they seem like an NBA team on the rise, are built around a big man in Sengun, who's very funky skill set. Like all the other best NBA players, he's not from America, so that's going to work well with Steven Adams. But I'm actually kind of happy that Steven Adams is out of Memphis Grizzlies because I don't think the Memphis Grizzlies are going to be better without Steven Adams, even if he wasn't playing. And okay, so let's assume Steven Adams isn't playing. I think he's going to be more beneficial on the Houston Rockets roster with what they're doing right now.
Yeah, I wrote about it yesterday, so it's fresh in my mind, and I found myself in that article writing a lot more. I realized as I was editing it, I'd written more about the Memphis Grizzlies side than I had on the Houston Rockets side, which is not the team he plays for anymore. But I just found that angle more interesting because I think there's some, yeah, there's definitely an element of like, it's a shame he's left. That was a really good team. I loved his fit on the court. There's also an element of, you know what though? Kind of glad that he's out of that because there's just something that wasn't quite right. And you look at that team, like you remember when Ja Morant first got suspended and there was a Shams thing about how like, well, actually they had a players only meeting recently and Steven Adams stood up and told everyone like, we have to be more dedicated. We have to work harder on these road trips, be more disciplined and whatever. And then it was like that night that Ja Morant went out to the strip club, you know, like it's like they all love him, but Ja Morant didn't listen to him when he told him to behave himself, and look what's happened to Ja Morant since, you know. And there's stuff about like the coaching there where it just felt like they loved what he had to offer, but they didn't fully embrace it as much as they could have. I got the feeling anyway, and yeah, it's not just now that they're having injuries. Say what?
Yeah, so how do you process that injury situation?
Well, I process it in the way that, first of all, it sounds like it was misdiagnosed because straight up they said he would be back in like 6 weeks, and then now it's been 18 months.
I'm meaning like because you've written specifically about Steven Adams and his injury with the Grizzlies, so you've got that comprehensive deep dive on our website, but more in the context of us learning that a lot of Memphis Grizzlies are actually injured.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is that we're learning it now because it's in our faces with Steven Adams being out injured, and potentially if he just had surgery at the start, he might even be back now. And it's definitely, I don't know, it's a bummer moment in New Zealand basketball because we've got Steven Adams out injured and Charlie Sledger-Walker out injured, and there's just our two best basketballers not currently able to play basketball for an extended period. But the thing is, when I'm looking back at it, I'm like, well, actually, the first season that Adams was there, I think Dillon Brooks missed an extended amount of time, and there was a period around about this time of the season where Ja Morant was out for a while, and they actually started winning heaps of games even without him. But Jaren Jackson Jr. was just coming back from, you remember his first couple of seasons prior to Adams turning up, he'd had a lot of injury issues as well. And Desmond Bane, I think, broke a finger at one point. That might have been the second season, but just all throughout the 2 seasons where Adams, well, it was 1.5 seasons really, where Adams was healthy there. They had a preferred starting lineup of Ja Morant, Desmond Bane, Dillon Brooks, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Steven Adams. They played, I think, less than 250 minutes together on the court across 2 seasons. And like Dillon Brooks he left after that, so that this season that hasn't been the case. But obviously this season Adams has been injured the whole time, so they've never had their starting lineup available, which I guess would have just been Marcus Smart and for Dillon Brooks. Like there's been no point at which Steven Adams has been in Memphis where they've been fully healthy for like more than a month at a time. You know, they've had injuries throughout, and that seems to have rubbed off on Adams's reputation to where now there's this thing about him being injury prone. And all I'll say about that, because I tackled that one quite directly in the article. All I'll say in relation to this trade, if there's question marks about him not being able to return from this injury, Houston wouldn't have traded for him. You know, it takes 2 to tango kind of thing. If Memphis are trying to flip him because they think he's broken, he's damaged goods, well, then what are Houston doing? Like either they're complete idiots, or maybe they're the St. George Illawarra Dragons, or maybe they're like, maybe the fact that Adrian Wojnarowski's follow-up tweet about it made quite clear Adams is expected to make a full recovery by next season. Maybe we should just trust that information because all signs point towards that. And also, in a like Occam's razor kind of way, like the simplest explanation is probably the right one. You don't need any additional information to wonder why the Memphis Grizzlies made this trade beyond the fact that they're trying to balance their books for next season. And if they didn't trade someone, they would be right up to, they call it the apron. There's the second apron now because the new CBA has changed the luxury tax stuff now. So I don't understand it even less than I understood it before. But something basically there's like a second level where you start getting punished pretty quickly and there's restrictions on how you can build your roster and there's the tax and blah blah blah. They're right on the fringes of that. Like they probably wouldn't be able to sign any more players if they hadn't got rid of someone else. So they had to get rid of someone. Did they have to get rid of Steven Adams? No, but like that was the offer that was on the table. That if Houston had come in saying we want Luke Kennard, they might have traded him instead because they had to trade someone. They just couldn't afford to, unless you've got a fully furnished roster that you know is going to win a championship. You're not doing that. That's madness. So strange. It was weird when they asked Coach Taylor Jenkins about it. First, they asked him and he said, I can't answer because it's not finalized, which is fair enough. But the second time they asked him about it, he's like, well, we're really excited to have flexibility. Like, yeah, it's great. You had a starting center, now you got flexibility. It's a great trade. So, I mean, the only guy they got back, they got 3 second-round picks, which are give or take. If you've got a good scouting team, you might get something out of those. If you don't, then they're kind of worthless, but you can sell them. So, it's something. The other guy they got is Victor Oladipo, who, guess what? He hasn't played a game this season either. Like he's currently out injured and they probably don't want him. So it's really just a flip for financial reasons. So I don't know. There's some ickiness about that Memphis Grizzlies situation, but that moves into the Houston Rockets one, where, as you say, like it's a different role for Adams. He'll be playing off the bench. They did say sort of like 20-ish minutes off the bench, which is, as far as bench roles go, that's a hefty bench role. That's a solid contributing to every game kind of role. It's not in OKC he was playing like 34 minutes. Memphis has been like 28. Here we're dropping to 20. It's a drop. Numbers will reflect that, but it's still a solid contributing role behind, Mr. Sengun, who seems to be fantastic. And the last time Adams played with a Turkish big man, they were best mates. So that's there's a bit more of an age gap here, and Sengun might turn out to be less of a lunatic than Enes Kanter ended up being. But there's some international center solidarity there. Nothing to sort of shrug off there. I like this fit in Houston. I think he's got a coach who wants him, which is always important, who went out specifically and got him. He's the kind of coach that he'll be able to work well with. He fits just the mold. Everything about, like, even before they traded for Adams, it's like the rumors of what Houston are trying to do. Well, they want a big man. They want a big man who can play off the bench behind Sengun, a veteran who can mentor him as well, someone who's going to be a good rebounder, who's going to sort of help enforce what the coach is trying to implement to the players, who's going to fit in with their defensive mindset that they're trying to develop. Well, Steven Adams does all of those things. Like, they found a guy who does all of those things. And this was before they said, we want Steven Adams because he does these things. It's not like the reverse engineering thing. It's like that was the model, and Steven Adams just happened to fit the model they were looking for, which is funny as well, because Taylor Jenkins said that they want Memphis want to give Jaren Jackson Jr. a bunch of minutes at the 5, but also they want to sign a Steven Adams archetype to do some stuff, which is really funny because Houston just traded for a Steven Adams archetype, and his name is Steven Adams, to do that same role. And Memphis is going to try find a worse version of the same thing. So bottom line of this is I kind of think Houston are going to win more games than Memphis next season.
For sure. I would go further and I'd say the whole vibe has flipped. Because peak Steven Adams with Memphis Grizzlies, Houston Rockets were diabolical.
Terrible, yeah.
They had issues on court, off court, everything. Now, I feel more about, I think the Grizzlies are tapping into that Houston Rockets space, and the Houston Rockets are emerging as like a bit of a Memphis Grizzlies team, 2020, 2021, whatever. So I think the whole vibe between those two NBA teams has flipped, and the flip is following Steven Adams. So that's pretty cool for Big Steve, but he's not even playing basketball. Let's talk about some basketball that's actually happening